Dome week. Louisiana versus all y'all's recruit that boot. Jarrett Roser here with Sam Spiegelman. Looking forward to 8 state championship games in the Caesars Superdome later this week. We'll talk about 10 players to watch that we think will be potentially some talking points coming out of these state championship games. It's again, 8 great matchups, 16 great teams, some fantastic, well-coached teams, and an awful lot of talent. But first, before we get into all the excitement of that, Sam, we wanted to hit briefly on some interesting college coaching dynamics. We're not going to get into all of the chaos of college football right now. It's a little bit too much to even keep up with all at once, but some notable dynamics going on. A couple of really big ones, certainly for Louisiana programs, as Tulane hangs on to Jon Sumrall and reworks some things to try and situate that program for success in the years to come, despite some Power 4 interest to pull away Tulane's head coach after the first year. And then our guy, another one of our guys, Gabe Fertitta, coming back home, going to be the OC at Nicholls State. The change in leadership there with Coach Tim Rebo's retirement, Coach Tommy Rebecki's ascent to be the head coach, and they get a heck of I tell Gabe, young-ish. I'm not giving him young anymore. We're getting a little bit old, but a young-ish coach with a lot of passion, a lot of knowledge, and a guy who, on top of what he's going to do as an actual coach, is going to recruit the heck out of the state of Louisiana. So as you watch these stories unfold one after the other this weekend, just kind of give me your initial takeaways.
Yeah, I think inevitably we knew that Coach Sumrall was going to be drawing interest. What he accomplished this at Troy, then at Tulane. I think we've said it on the podcast. I think the longer the Green Wave fan base gets to hold on to Jon Sumrall, the better. But it is inevitable. This is one of the most coveted coaches. He was the last cycle connected to the Kentucky job. He was already connected to the UNC job. And Jarrett, believe this or not, there's probably going to be another opening or so that he will get connected to. And that's going to be a theme that over the next couple of years, he's got ties not only to Louisiana, but to Mississippi, to Alabama, and the state of Kentucky. So ultimately, what we're seeing is he views what he's done at Tulane, obviously the talent on the roster that he's helped bring in, recruit, help transfer in, all of the above. The success they had in year one, he's going to build off that. I think he's anxious to make that college football playoff as a group of 5 team. I think he's eventually going to get to that, and then after we'll see who comes calling. But I think it's great for the program, great for the direction of the program, and what it says nationwide about what Tulane is, that in Jon Sumrall's eyes, one of the best coaches, talent evaluators, recruiters, football minds in college football, best young at that, coach mind at that, thinks Tulane is a good enough job that he won't leave for potentially UNC, which is obviously a great dual sport, multiple sport university, but says a lot about Tulane and where they've come over the past half decade plus.
For him, I think on this week's episode of Podnas with Daniel Hawks, I was telling him, for Tulane, there's always that concern, or for any non-blue blood Power 4 program, there's always concern, okay, if we get a great coach who's able to build some things and get some momentum going, someone's going to come in and pay an offer that guy can't refuse, whether it be the financial side, as well as the opportunity to get the best players in the country there. And so when you lose Willie Fritz a year ago, you have to be concerned, okay, how does this hire go? Do we find the right fit, someone that can keep this thing rolling? And they hit an absolute home run in bringing Jon Sumrall to New Orleans. And so then the concern of, do we have to hit on this 2 years in a row? And what are the odds of that? The more you have to find someone to keep it going, the more opportunity there is to possibly miss. And so to be able to lock him in and have him be committed to staying in New Orleans for longer is certainly really exciting. We saw also, though, 2 of those 3 quarterbacks are now transfer portal bound. And so as much as the Green Wave is making progress to be able to compete at a national level, to go potentially make a playoff here sooner than later, to get some notable talent in there, what does that climb look like for them to get to that point where you don't have to worry about that year in and year out of will the coach bounce? Will the quarterback that we found that no one else was offering out of college or out of high school, will that guy bounce if we do hit how long do we even get to reap the benefits of that? What does that process look like to try and get to a place where, okay, this is that much more of a destination and not just a stepping stone, a stopping ground?
I don't know if that exists anymore, Jared. We just saw Texas and Georgia play in the SEC championship game on Saturday night, and on Sunday or Monday, and I forget what day of the week it is. But since then, you've seen a bunch of kids from both those rosters hit the portal. You've seen a mass exodus in Baton Rouge. You're seeing a lot of names leaving Uptown. You're seeing this as a nationwide trend. My question is, one, are they going to end up staying at their current university? Are they testing the waters because of they just want to see what the market is like, what other opportunities might be best out there for them? Or is it, to your point, is there a perfect destination for anyone? Or like, I just don't think that maybe that there is an endpoint. Maybe for coaches, there's only so many jobs that are so coveted, that fit the job. There's a handful in college football, and then you can always consider, obviously, hometown ties and alma maters and whatnot. But sorry, I don't know if you heard
Tucker is not having any of this right now.
Tucker is arguing, I think, that Tulane is that premier job that people aren't going to want to transfer away. But we were seeing it everywhere, so I don't think any school is immune to it right now. And what we're seeing on the first day that the portal is open, it's bizarre.
Does it appear like that is college athletics now, regardless of which conference you're in or your history or track record or whatnot? One thing we do know for sure is what uniforms some of these high school guys will be wearing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in the Superdome. And so we can get excited about that. We'll talk more throughout the winter about some of these transfer dynamics going on throughout the 30-day transfer portal window. But we're super excited about these 8 high school games. Looking forward to some great matchups. I think some of the more evenly matched toss-up type matchups across the board that we've seen from an 8-game set, an 8 or 9-game set of state championships in recent years. And obviously from a recruit that boot standpoint and looking more of a player, a prospect type lens, we wanted to talk about some of the top players to watch, some guys that we're really intrigued to see in that setting and in some of these matchups, as well as some guys that, I mean, it happens every year, become talking points for fans, leaving blown away by some fantastic young high school football players that they've seen for the first time, maybe haven't heard about, maybe heard a little bit about, but get a chance to see and are really impressed with. And so we're going to kind of take turns, almost a draft style, sharing 10 guys that we think are top players to watch, whether they be top prospects or just high impact high school guys, maybe a little bit under recruited. And we'll try and kind of spread the love around and not focus too much on any one team. But Sam, if you want to go ahead and share one person you think fans really need to have an eye on between these three days and 8 games.
Yeah, we're not gonna just harp on one team or one particular side of the ball, but in terms of juiciness of the matchup, I had to go with my first pick, who I think potentially could be a first round pick one day. Big Rich Anderson. What that Carr defensive line as a unit did against Baton Rouge Catholic was sensational. Slowing down one of the most dominant units in all of high school football, the Catholic Cur Dog offensive line. And in comes JT Lindsay, who's in the thousands. We're not just paying 1,000 yards. We're talking about 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 yards in a season. That Alexandria offensive line has been mulling over defensive tackles and defensive ends for the span of the season. I don't know if they've seen a defensive tackle with the stature of Big Rich Anderson, 6'4", 300 pounds, let's call it, maybe a little bit north of that at this point. And 2, the explosiveness, first step of Big Rich, commanding double teams, absorbing double teams, breaking through double teams at an insane clip. You already know that I love him. I'm excited to see how JT Lindsay and this Alexandria offensive line can control the tempo against Big Rich and company.
We might as well let those two be the first two, Rich and JT. Those are 2 guys, and kind of a spoiler alert that of 5 guys to watch that I'm going to share with the LHSA network, those are 2 of the 5. Arguably the top 2025 and top 2026 prospect in the Dome this weekend. They certainly have some competition there. I mean, including a couple of Rich's teammates on that Edna Carr team with Teron Francis in the 25 class and Aiden Hall in the 26 class. But you talk about Rich, an absolute monster in the middle of that defensive line for Edna Carr, and Cat Quick at his size. JT Lindsay, we've talked about repeatedly on this show throughout his senior season, and I'm really going back to the heels of his junior season when we were starting this up, but he has been exceptional all season long. I don't think he's hitting 4,000 yards, but he's already up over 2 for the season. And
you never know what'll happen on Saturday.
Well, look, it's the last game of the year. He's not going to hold anything back. So JT Lindsay, I think, kind of caught a lot of our attention early on in his career with some of the track speed that he brought to the table. And he's a guy that everyone around Alexandria will tell you they've never seen get caught in the open field. Once he gets that green space in front of him, he is gone. But his toughness increasingly over the last couple of years, watching him run over defenders, watching him keep his legs driving through contact and be fighting for extra yards, his ability to bounce off of a lot of that contact and keep his balance and have highlight reel plays that seem to every single week showcase a wide range of those attributes all in one play has been incredible. And while Alexandria has, I think, safely to say, not seen a defensive tackle like Big Rich or a defensive line quite like Edna Carr, I don't think Edna Carr has seen a running back this season quite to JT Lindsay standards. And so in terms of strength on strength, I think we're going to get a hell of a matchup on Saturday afternoon between those two.
You got no arguments for me, Jarrett. Speaking of electric running backs, let's go to the Division II select. Jasper Parker, I am so excited. Again, I probably would have thrown JT out there myself, but getting that senior eval for not only JT, but Jasper Parker, who has cemented himself. You know, we talked, it was a whole theme for months on this podcast, trying to figure out where these Louisiana backs stacked up nationally. And I think, obviously, between Harlem, between JT, and also Jasper, these are just 3 of the guys that put themselves on the national spectrum. Jasper was at the 5-star with us in June, and he put on a show. Obviously, we know he's built like a rock. He's going to go to Michigan and be the next blistering Big Ten back between the tackles. But what he's able to give Shaw out of the backfield as a pass catcher, what he's able to do in space, and also just be an absolute workhorse, setting all the records for Coach Hank. Every time we've seen Coach Hank in the Dome, he's had just so many different weapons to unleash, and I just don't think he's ever had a back, and he's had Tyjae Spears. I don't think he's ever had I'm saying this with that as the context. I don't think he's had a back like Jasper, especially in a game like this.
2 fantastic running backs. Obviously, we're talking about back-to-back, and Jasper would be, I think, the only – I'm trying to remember back through the whole Carr schedule, but that season opener, Shaw and Edna Carr against Jasper in the rain and in the monsoon there in September would be the other running back in that conversation in terms of the best backs that Edna Carr has seen. Obviously, 2 different backs, but 2 backs that bring well-rounded games to the table. So we've hit on some really notable high-level prospects, and I'll kind of, for my second, give a little bit of a curveball to that just to kind of mix things up. But sticking in Division II on the non-select side, Diesel Solari has been great all season, great all high school career when he's been healthy, but the playoffs has been absolutely unreal. Through 4 games, all on the road for the 18th seeded Cecilia Bulldogs, Diesel is 44 for 69 passing the ball for 684 yards and 10 touchdowns, has rushed 55 times for 467 yards and another 8 scores. So he's up there toward 5 touchdowns a game, almost 300 yards a game between the 2, and has just been unreal as kind of the ringleader of this high-flying Cecilia offense that's averaging 53 points throughout the playoffs, despite having had to go to Pearl River, Lutcher, North DeSoto, and Plaquemine, some really good teams there. A guy that I cannot be told at this point, could not at least go to the Southland and be a really dynamic, change of pace, versatile piece to their offense that has some good packages for him to come into play. I think he can be more than that for, if not an FCS team, potentially even a group of 5 team. But someone's got to figure this out and get Diesel a college home, because he can be a difference maker at one of these levels for somebody. And I think he has an opportunity to go in there against a Franklinton team that has been really good and go be a handful the way he has against all of these other really good teams along the way.
Well, we might be going back to Cecilia in just a bit, but no spoilers, and we'll see if Simon and Garfunkel start playing in the back of my office. I'm going to go over to the Saturday night primetime game. We got to see Houston signee DK Mays week 1 in New Orleans. However, he was playing with his wrist was all taped up. He was playing at, I think he said maybe 70-80% pregame. I'm DK Mays and his brother, for that matter, but this entire Central defense has stepped up, and I am so excited to see a healthy DK Mays at this point of his senior season. Very rare do you get to see kids multiple times during their senior seasons, but if for listeners of the show, we talked about DK as which one of these senior defensive linemen in the state are going to take that leap forward. We kind of knew that Joshua Lewis had taken a big step forward in the offseason. We've seen what Rashad Sterling has looked like for Lutcher, especially en route to their playoff run. But DK Mays is just being electric as more of that bendy, big edge presence for Central. There's a couple of Central guys that I'm really excited to see. Because of rules, I don't know if I can name them all. So I'm going to go with the senior, because in the post game, I might be talking about someone else who I might be getting to. I don't want to, when there's seniors still on the line, you don't want to be throwing out sophomores and everyone else who get you all geeked up.
We're about to get to some sophomores here pretty soon. There's some fantastic 2027 guys. And so I'm going to do it because with Central, you mentioned DK, you mentioned KD, and so we kind of shoehorn in both Mays brothers, who have been fantastic and will continue to be fantastic, continuing to spoil a little bit that LHSA network piece. I'm going to talk more about KD Mays there, who has been just a heat-seeking missile and a versatile leader for that Wildcats bunch. And so to continue to kind of spread the love around, let's talk about the sophomore a little bit, Marvin Joseph Jr., who we knew was going to be a really good member of this team sooner or later. And then because of everything going into the season, the car accident, missing seniors, all of a sudden a lot was on that guy's shoulders right off the bat in that season opener against De La Salle. And he had himself a heck of a game as a difference maker on both sides of the ball, playing safety, playing running back, playing some Wildcat quarterback, and has just continued to build on that all season long, including what ultimately ends up being the game winner up there at Neville to upset Neville in Monroe for a second straight postseason. DK Mays gets his big Wildcat or Cougar paw up there on a field goal, blocks that thing. Marvin Joseph is gone 85 yards the other direction. And so suddenly a potential 6-point Neville lead is a 4-point Central lead, and they're heading on to a first state championship game since 1966. He's a guy that you and I have talked about a little bit, I think has potential on either side of the ball. And I expect to be a safety prospect to watch coming out of that 2027 class. But from what we've seen of him on both sides of the ball, it's been really impressive and intriguing to watch his continued development for the years to come. And he's a guy that has an opportunity to get in some space and become a talking point coming out of this game for folks that probably are a little bit less aware of him so far than other guys we've talked about.
No doubt, he made he had a statement in that opener. He put himself on my radar in a big way, and at the tail end of the 2024 season, he's someone I'm excited again to see. I think one of the best sophomores in the state, and has a chance to make some noise in the Superdome, which is always critical. Let's talk about someone who did make noise in the Superdome last year, having the lofty task of trying to slow down Trey'Dez Green. That's Aiden Anding, who not only was superb in coverage, but returned a punt for the state championship Ruston Bearcats. Aiden Anding has been exceptional, proving to be the number one defensive back in the state of Louisiana for this class. And I'll never forget Coach Ball just kind of speaking so highly of Aiden about his return to football after taking some time off, and he does it all at Ruston. It's he's kind of the big a big deal kid in a small town, but he's extremely humble, and his senior season has been one for the record books. He's someone that we're sliding into the national ranks after because of how great he has been as a senior. He's just about 6 foot. He's very lanky. But his range is extraordinary. His ball skills are extraordinary. Much like someone like Marvin Joseph, Aiden makes big plays not only on defense but in special teams. I love that in a defensive back. I think he could play not only corner. I think he could also line up in the nickel because he's so cat quick, and because he plays for Coach Ball and those Bearcats. You don't have to worry about his physicality level at the cornerback position. I'm excited to see what he does. Because Central isn't going to be slinging it down the yard like some of the teams, like when they played Zachary. I'm excited if they unleash Aiden potentially as a blitzer, get some trickage on defense because of his skill set.
It's crazy to me that we're getting as close to 10 guys already as we are, because I think I've got another 20 in front of me that we haven't said that I thought would be good candidates to talk about here. But let's make sure we get to another sophomore that needs to get mentioned in this at some point, and that's Elijah Haven, the quarterback of the Dunham School, has the Tigers back in a state championship game. They're trying to complete that mission that narrowly eluded them 2 years ago, but making sure that we've got the top prospects potentially from each class mentioned in some capacity. Elijah Haven is a huge target for LSU and other schools all over the country already as just a sophomore in his second year starting. Already, we talked about earlier this season, already setting school career records with all kinds of time left to go over there at the Dunham School. And he's a kid that stands out in terms of his stature, his athleticism, his big arm, and his poise in the biggest moments that they've had throughout this season, both in terms of navigating some pressure from opposing defenses, being able to make big throws on the move, keep his eyes downfield, do whatever his team needs him to do in some spots, and in some game pressure situations where they're down and desperately need to play to scrape out and stay undefeated, despite not necessarily having their best game start to finish on a given night. They've blown a lot of people out, but in tight games, he's had his best plays down the stretch of fourth quarters to make sure that he lifts them. And that is extremely impressive for a guy as young as he is to have games where he's, let's go ahead and throw 3 deep dimes against Lafayette Christian in the fourth quarter to outscore the Knights 21-0 and keep this thing rolling. And so Elijah Haven is a guy that I think you and I both knew had to be on this list at some point.
If you weren't pulling the trigger, I was, Jarrett. At any level or classification, but primarily for the Dunham at the Class 3A, and him being that position, you want to see whether it was Devontae Smith or Derek Stingley Jr. or Arch Manning, or in this case Elijah Haven. Can you take over the game when the moment is grandest? And we've seen on multiple occasions he is more than capable of stepping up to that challenge, with more than 100 touchdowns in his prep career, and certainly counting going into Friday. I'm going to go to I have some 2027s. I was excited to kind of throw curveballs with. I think they might make it to our post game show as well. So I'm going to go with 2026 safety Aiden Hall. Let's wrap it up for Carr. Last week, 2 of the best safeties in the country went off against each other on opposing defenses in Baton Rouge Catholic and Blaine Bradford, and Aiden Hall for Edna Carr. Aiden we talk about how great the Edna Carr defensive line is, but to have someone with such a physical intensity on the back end like Aiden Hall going against this JT Lindsay orchestrated Alexandria offense, obviously I think it's already going to be a tough challenge breaking through that Carr defensive front 7. But when you factor in the physicality of Aiden, who covers a ton of ground, he's like a missile being launched from his back end, and he's also just exceptional in coverage, which we saw in multiple facets, whether it was LSU camp this summer or in the camp settings, various in the off season. He's a ready to go missile. I know he's one of the best safeties in the country, and he's just an added weapon for Coach Howard and that Carr defense going against JT Lindsey. And if and when JT breaks through, we're going to see how Aiden and JT meet in the open field. It can be some sparks.
Aiden's physical as can be, and you talk about sideline to sideline. That game, Carr versus Catholic, a couple days ago, he was legitimately on each sideline in ways where I would look up and say, "Is that Mo Williams? Is Mo getting that big?" And realize, nope, it's just Aiden, literally everywhere on the field, seemingly at all times. And so, really impressed by him as always, and looking forward to seeing him and those Cougars back on the dome turf. That Edna Carr team may be as talented as any Edna Carr team that we've seen since back in Speedy and G's days, and that whole crew that was coming through Algiers back when we were kind of young pups in our own right coming through NOLA.com. I want to make sure that we get somebody from one of these Division IV games as well. There's some great talent still on the board at every level, but would be remiss to not mention the senior quarterback at Vermilion Catholic, Jonathan D'Artes, who has had an absolutely prolific career, an absolutely prolific senior season. He broke the state record for most combined touchdowns in a season this past week. He's up in the high 130s now in terms of his touchdowns. His career touchdown number for passing and rushing touchdowns, because every single Friday night for the Eagles, if defenses are able to slow down the receiving core, then he's just cutting them up with his legs. If teams sell out and are bottling him up and making running lanes tough to come by, then he's finding those guys on the outside and delivering passes in stride. And no matter what opposing defenses have done this year, Jonathan D'Artes has continued to be dynamic as could be in whatever they're giving him. He was really good 2 years ago as a sophomore in that game against Ouachita Christian. Had a couple of plays they would probably like back against a loaded OCS team that year. And now he and a couple of other key members of this 25 class come back with that experience, that hunger to see those guys again, try and complete what has been a storybook career for those guys in a lot of ways. They've had 3 straight undefeated regular seasons and just been knocking at the door trying to win VC's first state championship since 2013. And so I know John's coming out fired up and with a mission that he's trying to complete. He's got to do it against a once again great OCS team, but he is going to be such a pivotal piece of that game one way or the other. With does he run wild the way he has all season, or can OCS find a way to slow him down enough to give Macon Leonard and Luke Vidrine and guys on that other Eagles team, the green and gold Eagles team, to be able to try and win another state championship.
Broke Juwan Johnson's all-time record that he was just set a year ago. So if you break Juju's record, come on, and one more game to add to the record books.
From Juju to Jon, the 3-3-7 dual threat quarterbacks just doing crazy things year in and year out at this point, and cannot wait to see all 10 of those guys that we just mentioned, as well as several more, because again, the deeper we got into this process, the more I realized I wish we could be talking about 30 or 40 guys, but there's only so much time in Sam's day.
It's so true. I am literally waiting to catch a flight ASAP to get over there.
Looking forward to seeing you in a couple of days, man. It's always fun in the Dome. Great way to wrap up the high school football season. Looking forward to seeing hopefully a lot of fans out to support all of these programs, all these kids of all ages, and just, great community storylines happening from all over the state, all meeting together in one place in the Superdome. We'll be there all 3 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 games, 2 games, and then wrapping it up Saturday evening. Sam, do you have any final thoughts or notes that you want to share before you hit the air and see us out here in a couple days?
I think I'll take all dinner recs for that big Saturday night meal in my mentions.
That's the beauty of the new schedule, is that we may actually have a chance to eat something outside of the Dome on Saturday night. And when I say outside the Dome, I really mean period, because usually we're scrambling around so much that we don't get a chance to eat at all.
I'm usually locked in that Superdome on Saturday night.
We're trying to fight our way out of all of the locked doors by 1:30 in the morning on Saturday night most years. And so the opportunity to maybe sneak out around 8 or 9 is really exciting.
Don't tease me with a good time.
He's Sam Spiegelman. I'm Jarrett Roser. This is Louisiana versus Orioles Recruit Dat Boot. Thanks as always to everyone for tuning in. Looking forward to recapping all these games here in just a few days. But again, thank you all for tuning in. Y'all be well until the Dome, and hopefully see y'all out there.